Hello, Voyagers. I am the last Omnitech, your favorite robot American. Thank you all so much for your patience as we got things started today. I've had to do a little bit of behind-the-scenes work that I didn't really expect to do this morning when I was getting this set up. So I appreciate everyone's reasonable patience while I get everything set up. You guys are great. I hope you're all doing well. As I said, I'm the last Omnitech, and today we're going to be doing not Omni Plays, but Omni Draws. Because today I'm working on a webcomic. You might have heard of it. We talk about it from time to time. And that would be Gentry Dolaan Aint No Fascist, which is something I've been doing for, God, over a year now. Like, year and a quarter? Year and a half? Something like that? It's been a hot minute. Needless to say, it has been a hot minute. Also, quick audio check. I'm not getting drowned out by the music, am I? We all good? Let me know if you're in the chat right now and you hear this, that it's not like, you know, too over the top. But anyhow, we're gonna get to the meat and potatoes of it today. I am gonna get some work done. I'm gonna make sure this is all muted. Good. Sounds alright? Heck yeah, appreciate you. That means a ton. Thank you, homie. Alright, so, for those of you who've been following my work for a while now, I've been doing this webcomic for quite some time, actually. Let me just pop my camera on. I'm waiting for one of these things to go wrong. Ha! Let's go. It wouldn't be a live stream if we didn't have to do live technical checks. So, I've been working on this webcomic now for quite some time, and I had just passed, I guess, update 50? It isn't really page 50. I have a lot of individual pages that are, like, uploaded at the same time. So, I really should probably, like, one day re-upload everything as individual panels. I don't know. Still feeling it out. But update 50 is coming out very shortly, and I'm very excited for it. So, I wanted to do a little bit of art today to work on something that has been sort of on my mind since the latest update. So for those of you who don't know, hold on. There is a new Helldivers 2 update that goes by the name of, there we go, I finally got it. I want to make sure this image is correct. Called EXO EXPERTS. And it is really fun. Thank you, Soul. I appreciate the lurk. Good to see you, buddy. So the EXO EXPERTS Warbond is so far my favorite Warbond in the game. Say what that says about my priorities, or for that matter, my level of taste, but I like me some big stompy robots. I've been waiting for a Warbond that supported them for quite some time, so thank you, Arrowhead. I don't know if you were listening to me, bitch, but if you were, you're amazing, and I appreciate you. So, those of you who don't know that much about Gentry, or about my webcomic, you should know that the comic literally started in its prologue days about Gentry Dolaan working on the EXO program. Literally, his being turned into a Helldiver is as a direct result of him protesting the deployment of the EXO-45, which, in the original, release of the game, was pretty bugged. It had a whole bunch of technical issues, and I even sort of lampooned them in the actual webcomic itself. FCS errors, because the thing couldn't shoot straight. Inferior composite armor plating, because it was incredibly vulnerable to, anything. It would blow up at the slightest touch. Their rockets were still armed with last-gen HE warheads, because they wouldn't properly blow things up. And combine that, they would often blow your pilot up spontaneously. So I threw all these things into the comic because I like playing with it. Exo Man, he wants to be an Exo Man. I do want to be an Exo Man. I enjoy being an Exo pilot. It's very fun. It's one of my favorite gameplay loops in the game. And that's no lie. That's not even that's not me doing it for the Gentry. That's me doing it because I like the thing. Pardon me, hair tie is just fighting me. Whew. Worse than a comb. So, as I was working on it, the whole thing starts with Gentry actually in an EXO and protesting and basically things going a little south. This all culminates with him ending up on Chuhi, where it is a result of a pretty severely intense battle with the automatons, which should have right here. Which one is it? There we go. I still actually kind of like this piece. This is not a bad piece. As a result of a major battle, a pitched battle against local automatons on Chuhi, he gets overwhelmed, encircled, and cut down by automaton hulks. And the next thing we know, he's waking up in a field hospital, and he is namely one controlled by automatons. And he finds out that he has been severely injured, critically injured. He lost his hands, and he now has augmentics. And this is where, basically, he gets drafted as the coordinator, the commanding officer of the EXOs at the time, basically offer him a chance to do what he's wanted to do from the very beginning, which is fight for the people of Super Earth, not for their corrupt government. And he doesn't take to it initially that well, but he grows into the role, and he does agree to work with the automatons. Hence the name of the entire comic, actually. I mean, literally, it's pretty on the nose. You know, doesn't know if he's a coward, doesn't know who he wants to be, but mark his words, he ain't no fascist. So this is literally the baseline of the comic, is inextricably tied to the EXO program and everything involved in it. And now that the EXO Experts Warbond has returned, I feel like it's only right for us to revisit that part of Gentry. Now especially that we have access to something that we didn't have before, which I think is very important. Additional EXOs. Up until now, the EXO program in Helldivers has been confined to 2 EXOs the entire time. That would be, and I'm going to open this up because I actually took a whole bunch of screenshots as of late. A whole bunch of screenshots. Just gotta find the damn things. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So, if we go from top to bottom, we have the Patriot Exosuit, the first introduced exosuit, with a Gatling cannon and a rocket pod. This is actually the exact same EXO that Gentry took onto Chuhi and was crippled within. You can even see it right here. Literally the same thing, just from a different side view. So, we have the EXO Patriot, the EXO-45 Patriot. Next, we have the EXO-47 Emancipator, which is known for having, as opposed to a diverse loadout, going all in on paired autocannons. This thing has 4 autocannons built into it, which is incredibly good. They are high velocity, rapid fire autocannons. They don't hit nearly as hard as some of the more extreme weapons in the game, but they can batter about anything to death you can think of. Anyone who's ever been an autocannon main, or, you know, crutched an autocannon for the early stages of the game, it's that, but with 4 of them and a heavily armored frame. It's actually pretty lovely. I very much leaned on the Emancipator for quite some time, to the point where originally Gentry's Traitor Mech, if we're gonna be honest, and I'm gonna try my best to peel back the veneer of lies and deception, Gentry's original personal EXO, known as Vigilant, was originally an Emancipator variant. A couple of tweaks here and there, but, you know, there it is, more or less. So we're changing that slightly, because now we have other options. Say hello, and I want to make sure I got the names of these right, because it's been a bit. So these exosuits, I believe it's the EXO-51 Lumberer? Yeah. I want to make sure I've got this correct, because I believe this is Helldivers 2. Nice. Yes, this is correct. So we have the EXO-51 Lumberer. So the Lumberer itself is an interesting mech. It actually starts as opposed to with a, it's basically kind of a revision of the original Patriot, but it's inverted. So its right arm weapon is a high impact. It's not even an autocannon, really. The only thing I can really describe it as is an anti-tank cannon. I'm pretty sure this thing fires the exact same shells that are used in the anti-tank turret stratagem that you can drop in the game, which is really fun. I really haven't used it very much, but having played with the Lumberer a lot, I might actually try to mess with it in the future, because it is spicy, spicy stuff. So it starts with this really powerful anti-tank cannon as its primary anti-armor option, but then on the other side, it has this lovely little flamethrower, which is surprisingly good at taking care of long-range opponents. Surprisingly long range. It is a flamethrower, so it's not like the longest thing, obviously. That's what the giant cannon is for. But this thing has a range of, like, what is it? It's pretty nuts. Spread, sway ergonomics. It doesn't show me the exact range on it, but it is very far. It's a fair few meters. I thought it would not be, but it's pretty good. So this thing can hit targets, I'd probably be willing to say about 50 feet away. Combine these two together, and you have a mech that's actually pretty well suited to taking care of maintaining a perimeter around itself and dropping a high impact firepower, which is pretty awesome, actually. It's a tanks cannon. Basically, yes, it is literally right down to having an auto-loader mechanism that you can actually see here in the arm. You can actually, as you fire the gun, the ammunition depletes and cycles into the gun. You can actually see it's a breech-loaded cannon. And every time it fires, it ejects the prior shell. You can actually even see from behind, you can actually see into the breech. This whole thing articulates. It's very cool. Again, props to the guys at Arrowhead for knowing how to make surprisingly good weaponry. So that's the Lumberer. The next we should probably talk about is known as the Breakthrough. So the EXO-45 Breakthrough is kind of a first for the Exos, at least as of late. I don't even think there was an equivalent to this in the original Helldivers. Like, yeah, no, there really wasn't. Yeah, I'm trying to think, but I don't think there was. Yeah, there wasn't. So the EXO-45 Breakthrough is specifically designed to be a melee primary weapon. It is a brawler. It is designed to get in close and beat the ever-loving crap out of other targets. It's actually kind of nuts, because this thing has this giant, heavily armored shield, and on its other hand, it has this rotary barrel flak cannon, which is not a weapon you often will see most of the time. And by flak cannon, I mean it's a giant shotgun. Basically, each of those shells contains a bunch of fragmentation metal, which, as it's triggered, detonates and showers it in front of it like a giant fuck-off shotgun. This is basically the same thing we used to take down aircraft for quite some time, but in this case, it's a significantly shorter range as opposed to filling the air with high explosive. This instead shrapnels an area with fragmentation bits. It's quite good. The shield itself is interesting. I wanted to call attention to the EXO-45 Breakthrough's left arm, which is really the thing everyone thinks about. This isn't just here to protect the mech, it's an offensive melee weapon. The mech, as it walks, can both stomp and charge with its melee attack. It also, because it's walking, does a lot of melee damage to anything around it. Basically, if you ever have stood, unfortunately close, to someone who's on your fire team piloting an EXO, you know you can very easily be killed by its feet. It's not uncommon to accidentally get crushed. So yes, when you're playing the game, mind the mechs. They will make your life miserable if you stand too close to them. But if enemies get too close to them, it's great. You don't even need to melee them half the time. Just sort of dance around in a little circle. Namely, put them in your back arc and in your side arc, and you'll usually do so much damage to them they'll just die. But this arm here has a universal joint that rotates just like our hand. It tilts up and down, rotates side to side, and can also pivot left to right. So it has full articulation at least in terms of range of motion, of the shield. And the really funny thing is when it melees with the shield, it appears to rock'em sock'em robot a little bit, where it extends its arm. I'm going to see if I can see that. There's like a particular image I want to try to show, if I can find it. Okay. So yeah, the Rock'em Sock'em robots, their arms actually extend a little bit in some of the more modern versions, but it's literally almost like a spring-loaded punch, which gives it a hell of an uppercut. So combined with the flak cannon, which is fantastic for clearing crowds, and this incredibly heavy shield, the breakthrough is a stunningly effective melee mech. Honestly, it's entirely viable now for an entire fire team of Helldivers to bring 4 mechs, each of them covering different roles. And it's a pretty effective play. Sorry, I wanted to have a little sip. So, why are we showing you guys all this? Well, because as much as I love Gentry's old mech, and I do, I will still stick at least with this being an option. I like the idea that Gentry being an original EXO engineer, and CMOS kind of being his background, Super Earth Ministry of Science. Keep up with the acronyms. I wanted to do my best to try to incorporate that into his lore. So, his original mech, Vigilant, we're just going to sort of retouch it a little bit. See how we want to revisit it, see how we want to make it work a little better with both the lore of the setting and with the actual, like, options presented to us. I'm no longer content with it simply being an emancipator with a couple of bells and whistles. Gentry was one of the original EXO engineers. It makes sense that now that he's front and center, he's probably made his own. And I want to make something worthy of our treasonous friend here. Speaking of our treasonous friend, if anybody out there is interested in reading the webcomic, you can read the entirety of Gentry Dolaan Aint No Fascist at my Patreon, for free. Patreon.com/TheLastDominatect. If you go there, I have the entirety of Gentry Dolaan Aint No Fascist as a readable playlist. So go click that, it's a collection, and you can scroll through the whole thing. It'll be a good run. You'll enjoy yourselves. Likewise, also, if you want to support me, you get some extra perks, including shoutouts, like Ampersand, Atlas, and JJ Cray at my Tier 1, Necrodomus and Souls Rolls at Tier 2, and, of course, Mossy the Mighty and Heinrich the Heroic at Tier 3. You guys literally keep the roof over my heads. Thank you very much. Not only do you get shouted out during my YouTube videos and my Twitch streams, but also you guys get credited as producers and as patron supporters in my webcomics, as well as also in my TTRPG projects. So keep an eye on it, and also, even if you follow it for free, you'll still get access to the webcomic, as well as also various news and my weekly streaming schedule. Anyway, back to our current topic of the moment. I want to make something special for Gentry. That's the long and short of it, really. So, especially since now Gentry has his whole Frontier Avenger design, I wanted to make this work a little better. We're actually going to go over here. We're going to highlight this with a nice yellow, so that it's a little more visible against my other tabs here. Because at the moment, for those of you who don't know, Gentry actually has a new armor set, known as the Frontier Avenger. I've been using this for a little bit now, and it works pretty well, actually. We're going to do the convert colors. Here we go. So, this is the current color scheme that Gentry has in the webcomic. I'm currently working on a traitor suit, but we'll see that soon. No need to do too much. Let's just say that the Cyberstanny Sun is going to be an interesting design. But, Lumberkin with the shield be mental, that's kind of what I was thinking. Let's get back to Vigilant here. So I want to, one, make Vigilant more accurately match what Gentry's Frontier Avenger design is. And you can actually see I already kind of started that. Even its color scheme is kind of similar to that. It's got that same sort of splash of white, cyan, and gold pips as well, much like Gentry himself here has. However, the color scheme is not enough. I want to incorporate some interesting little features. So my thought isn't just that we're going to have the mech use its existing systems that are on the table. I don't want to simply have Gentry lift the arms off another mech and clip them into place. We can. I think it's not unreasonable for Vigilant to actually have modular arms. So, like most Exos, they seem like they're built around a very modular frame. I don't see much distinction between the center torso of a Breakthrough and the center torso of a Lumberer. And in fact, actually, hold on, we've got the references here. Why even bother to ask? Okay, looks the same. Gonna go to the Lumberer next. Looks the same. Yep. Yep. There. I've definitively proven that the back and the center torso of each of these mechs is identical. The leg, the entire thing, basically, is exactly the same, with the exception of its modular arm systems. So, while I'm sure that Gentry absolutely, if a mission calls for it, would be perfectly fine lifting new mech arms onto Vigilant's chassis, I want to have him have a mech that's a little more bespoke to him. Something that does something that no other mech can. So we're gonna run with this and have a little more fun. First off, I do want to keep the Gatling. So let's work on this. This is not a custom refit Emancipator. We're actually going to give this thing a new designation. So far, if I look through, again, our little lore blurb here about what our EXO models are, our current EXO model suits are EXO-45, EXO-49, EXO-51, and EXO-55. I believe, every once in a while, in the Gundam Wing mechanism of, like, designing stuff retroactively. Of going, hey, you know what's cool? Prototypes. And not just prototypes, over-engineered prototypes. So we're gonna run with that. There's much room on the shoulders and on the roof. Yes, I'm definitely gonna get to that. So my thought is simple. Vigilant won't simply be the name, it will be the make. This will be a specific line of walkers designed by Gentry. Vigilant is his personal one, but this is the name of it. So it'll be the EXO insert number here, Vigilant. So let's fix that. So EXO, we're gonna remove the italics here. We don't need italics. We need orbiter. Let's just make this normal. Perfect. So the EXO insert number here, Vigilant. I'm gonna slightly increase the size of this. And also, fun little detail, you can even see here that actually Gentry is part of a larger group within the Helldivers. It's pretty well known that a lot of Helldivers have, like, their own personal squads and stuff that they run, sort of like guilds or clans, but they're not really supported in-game at the moment. And these often take the forms of regiments or platoons. So I believe that Gentry would be part of the 613th Armored Cavalry Regiment, also nicknamed the Roadrunners. And they're all EXO pilots, and they're basically just all pilots. They're all pilots, is the deal. So EXO 60, because 6 is V in numerals. That'd be fun. More art. Let's go. Hey, Emperor Samples, good to see you. I do like that, actually. EXO 60 is very fun. That is pretty fun. Okay, so here's my thought. I like EXO 60, but I want to make a retroactive design. I like the idea that what Gentry has here is he's not gone forward in its design scheme, he's gone backward. Remember what I said at the very beginning of this stream, where I told you that part of the reason why Gentry ended up on Shuhei in the first place was because our boy actually was one of the primary designers behind the Patriot program? We're gonna run with that. I believe that Gentry repeatedly attempted to improve the mech. It's even mentioned in the first comic. It's why he gets assigned into the Helldiver Corps, drafted against his will as a Helldiver. One of the few not volunteer Helldivers is because of the fact that he refused to take no for an answer and insisted on trying to improve the designs of the EXO, when CMOS was just interested in getting them into the field even if they killed people. So, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking, Mossy. We're going an earlier model number. We're going with a prototype model. Basically what we have here is a perfect chance to recreate one of my favorite old tropes, which is the tall geese. If you're unfamiliar with the Oz 00 MS tall geese, then I am sad to tell you that you have been woefully undereducated. You have missed a great opportunity as a child to see something really fucking kick-ass. So, the Oz MS-00 is a prototype design from Gundam Wing, way back in the day. It is the OG mobile suit from which, in this show, the Gundams are all derived from. It's the baseline technology for all mobile suits in the setting, before even Wing Zero. This thing was the mech. It was the granddaddy mech in the mobile suit core. The issue the tall geese had was it was vastly over-engineered. And this is a thing you don't often hear about when you're talking about, like, technology development and such, but it is important. Which is the fact that sometimes, well, sometimes you make something that's too expensive, or too needlessly over-tuned. You can have a machine that is too powerful to field or use. For that, I address one of my favorite planes as well, the SR-71 Blackbird. The SR-71 Blackbird is probably one of the most over-engineered warplanes ever designed. Technically, this thing was designed as an aerospace reconnaissance craft. It's a hypersonic jet, and it was nuts. To this day, it's still one of the fastest planes ever made. Something sunrise at midnight? Yes, pretty much. And yes, I agree, the Tall Geese was a spectacular mech. Love that thing. The SR-71 Blackbird was incredibly powerful as a plane, but had some huge issues. Even though nothing could catch it, even other missiles weren't fast enough to catch this thing. It was never shot down as far as I know. Simply put, one, it required incredibly intense training, and it was not an easy pilot, ever. Two, they were phenomenally expensive to manufacture. These things, I think we only ever made a couple of them. Like, maybe 4 to 5, tops. And I think even that's probably me overestimating. I wouldn't be surprised if our entire fleet of SR-71s was like 3 or 2. And then finally, it was fuel. This thing guzzled so much jet fuel, it basically meant that even though it could circumnavigate the globe in a reasonably short period of time, it would use about as much fuel as any 4 to 5 other fighters to do the same thing, which is kind of a problem. And finally, there's the over-engineered fact of this craft was so fast, it could actually, theoretically, break atmosphere. Not that it would be good for it, because it's not rated for space, but it is capable, theoretically, of nearly hitting escape velocity. Which is bad when you're a plane dependent on air. So, the SR-71 Blackbird served for a few years and then was retired after the Cold War. It, simply put, was too expensive to maintain and its use was too niche. We have other cheaper reconnaissance craft now. They're just not quite as scary as this. So, the SR-71 Blackbird is the Tall Geese. Is what we're going to be going with here, what Vigilant is going to be. Vigilant is the original prototype, or one of the original prototype designs. Probably not the OG, but one of like the first 10 to 15 designs. Again, Mossy, I like the use of 6. So we're going to go with the SR-06 as our designation for Vigilant today. The EXO-06, I might give it /P to denote that it's a prototype, or I might give it, there's a part of me that wants to go like XXO. I might do that. So, just for the fun of it. We'll do X. So, if it would be P, it'd be the EXO-06-prototype, or the EXO-06, and I'm going to go with X here, experimental. This is actually the reason why, for those of you who are curious about, like, as I mentioned, the SR-71 Blackbird, there's a whole program that was run in the United States, the Skunkworks program, known as the X-Planes program. Basically, during the Cold War and a little bit and around that era, we wanted to have the most advanced plane on the planet, and so we hired Lockheed Martin and Boeing in the US to basically compete to make the craziest plane designs they could. Shit that would just be faster, more dangerous, more efficient than anything else. And they went insane. They rapidly prototyped a bunch of planes. Everything from low orbit to actual orbital craft, to hypersonic bombers, to incredibly nimble jets, to literal flying saucers. It's pretty nuts. If you're a sci-fi fan, or a sci-fi artist and you don't know about it, one, I don't know how, but two, go look it up, the X-Plane program. Anyway, the X in X-Plane was experimental. That's what the acronym meant. That's what the actual designation was. So, we're doing that here. This is an exoplane. This is an EXO. So, an experimental EXO. This is the EXO-06-X VIGILANT. This is a prototype, no longer an EXO-49 Emancipator, but a prototype refit, or custom refit of experimental testbed EXO. So basically, Gentry found one of these things mothballed and brought it back out. Here's a couple of the things that I want to keep from the original design, as you can see for the non-standard modifications. For starters, an adapted stratagem launcher. This is where I had to give a little credit to another creator in the space. I'm going to just pop in over here and make sure I open it up. I want to make sure I do this right. I believe it's EPG6 is the name of the creator. It is, yes. Okay, cool. So, in particular, there was one video they released. I'm going to share it with you all with the understanding that it is going to be muted and that you should go follow them and you should absolutely subscribe. So, I'm going to share this link inside a chat. Please go follow them. They're amazing. That is the actual video we're watching right now. And I'm going to just close this, open this. So, the modifications that, you know, our friend EPG6 here made include a faster walk cycle so that it moves more quickly. This is their wish listing for how the EXOs should behave. Second, a stratagem launcher, which allows you to deploy stratagems while in the EXO, which is a huge vulnerability of the EXO, is normally to get out to do stratagems. One of the other things I really liked was an ergonomic improvement that allows you to actually ride the top of the EXO, and from a stable firing position on top, actually engage while the EXO was fighting, which is an incredibly cool idea. And then finally, one of the other improvements is melee capacity increase, where it actually has a melee chain ability, which is pretty fucking cool. I loved this thing. It was really awesome. And this last one is just a rational improvement to how the stratagem should work, which is the ability to actually, like, extract your EXO and repair it and reload it, so that way you don't have to wait for the entire time. Again, a huge thanks to, like, this creator in the space. Inspired the crap out of me. Again, this is EPG6, EPG-6. Go follow this guy. I'm not sponsored. I don't know them. They're amazing. They've done all these incredible videos. And they're just one of the coolest creators in the Helldivers space. Go follow EPG6. They're just cool. They're just fucking cool. Anyway, I'm taking a fair few notes from EPG6's expanded EXO 2 program, EXO 2.0 program. So these include the stratagem launcher, which you can see actually on the shoulder of the original Vigilant, as well as also a couple of other details. Improved 3M weave musculature. This is a thing that I mentioned in the comic, actually. Gentry's arms aren't powered by electric motors. Instead, Gentry's arms use what's known as 3M weave. This is basically a type of liquid metal muscle that exists within his arms. It allows him to move and strike with incredible force, actually. Let me see, it should be in the old designs. Here we go. So, this is helmet, cloak, scavenged arms. Where is it? We mentioned it. I know I mentioned it in here somewhere. I know it's on here somewhere. I just can't remember which one it is. Here we go. It's on his actual body anatomy. So, 3M Weave. One of the biggest issues with standard C cybernetics is their usage of simple electric motors. Functional, sure, but they aren't exactly precise. Sorry, I should be doing this in Gentry's voice. Or particularly strong. Occam's designs utilize a type of memory metal musculature. Woven into cabling, these can expand and shrink, much like living muscle does. The biggest difference is that being made of metal, they're denser, and thus generate a lot more force than living muscle tissues. Same tech we use to move the EXO's legs. Occam called it 3M. Memory Metal Musculature. So, Gentry's used that on his cybernetics. He's used it in his armor. It only makes sense he'd expand it in its usage in the original EXO designs, as opposed to the inferior, the inferior electric muscle system, or I should say electric motor system, that the original EXOs had. Which makes them cheaper to manufacture, sure, and probably easier to maintain, but not as strong or as fast. So, the 3M Weave musculature has been refined, which makes it faster. I hardened its armor plating to be ceramic, as opposed to just the traditional tin pot armor that these things normally have. Mercury flow hydraulics. Yeah, basically. More or less, you nailed it. In this case, it's actually expanding metal fibers when it's introduced with electric muscle impulses. But yeah, mechanically speaking, it's basically moving metal around. More or less, at the end of the day. So I like the idea of hardening ceramic armor plates on the exterior to give it more durability. And also this thing integrates with Gentry's cybernetics. So he doesn't just pilot the EXO with control sticks and pedals. He has, again, cybernetic hands. And, well, I mean, why not use what Super Earth, or in this case, the cyborgs gave you, right? Technically he gave it to himself, I suppose, but you get the point. So, that's pretty much all of it. The only other thing is an expanded camera suite, which I had up here. You can sort of see these two little dome cameras, and there's also the little camera down here. Most of the time, the EXOs, as far as I can tell, only have a single camera and a viewport up here. Let's get to one where you can actually see a little more clearly. Here we go. So the Lumberer. You can actually see that on the Lumberer's design. We have a viewport here of glass, and we have what appears to be a smaller camera suite, with what I'm willing to bet are one of these being a rangefinder system, most likely, and the other one being clearly a rotating camera that lets you look up and down. This would let you see in front of you. This would let you see from the line of sight of a person, because the EXO is roughly about, from what I can tell, about 12 feet tall. So this would put the camera just slightly over eye level of your average person, which would be pretty good for not hitting people. It's basically a backup cam, so you don't accidentally step on, your squad mates, or so that you intentionally step on things that needs to die. So I figured we would have an expanded suite. Primarily because Gentry doesn't just fight things that are smaller than him, he tends to fight bigger things. As a result, having a camera suite that will allow him to track things that are vertically above him more efficiently, as well as also swivel around and view things 360 degrees around him, giving him true visual input, as if he was personally looking, that to me is very important. So it retains the original ground camera, but also has these two swivel cameras on top. These are all features we're going to be keeping moving from the original Vigilant Emancipator modified design to the now EXO 6X Vigilant Experimental Testbed Exosuit. Again, my thought is, Gentry didn't think of how to improve the EXO. This was the original plan for the EXO, and Super Earth did what we did with the SR-71 Blackbird, take one long look at it and decide that shit's too expensive to mass manufacture, which in fairness, for the first time ever, actually giving Super Earth credit in my comic for anything is a probably reasonable presumption that this might have been too expensive to manufacture. So given what we've got, let's start messing around. We've given all the preamble we could possibly need. I've also given this thing sort of an expanded power pack in the back. You can sort of see it's got like these two little sort of over-the-shoulder humps. I figure this thing's got an expanded radiator system as well, so that way it bleeds off excess energy. So these are the features we're keeping. Let's go in here and we're gonna just adjust this. I want this to be the same color as that. Bam. Okay. So let's get our armaments now. There's a couple things we're gonna be keeping. We mentioned before that I really freaking like the Lumberer. If I'm being honest, my favorite of all the new Exos is the Lumberer. This thing is cool as hell. It's really fun to play, it's really effective against basically Terminids, and damn near anything, actually, that you need to kill with a really big long-ranged cannon. The rocket pod from the Patriot, that can miss. There's a fair bit of travel time between firing and the rocket hitting a target, even at medium range. This cannon is high velocity. It will hit way faster. And so it's really good for pinpoint killing big stuff. I very much enjoy it. The flamethrower is nice, but it doesn't have enough ammunition, in my opinion. It's designed for suppression, not offensive. You don't usually use it to strike at a huge horde. Use it to lay the ground on fire in front of them and force them to walk through the flames, or soak a bug breach with it. It's great for preemptively controlling the battlefield and keeping things away from you. It's not very good at killing directly, if that makes sense. Or rather, it's decent at it, but you're going to run out of ammo at a stunning rate, then you're going to be overwhelmed because you have a high-velocity tank cannon that cannot fire fast enough to deal with the horde. Or without just damaging you, because it does have a pretty good blast radius. So we're going to keep the 105mm cannon. I believe it's a 105mm. I want to make sure about that. I don't know if they ever specified what category it is. I know it's the Lumberer anti-tank cannon. Hold on. Let's see. If it's an anti-tank cannon, it's likely the exact same as the emplacement anti-tank cannon. Which I'm just going to see if they have any notes on its caliber. It doesn't seem like they have any notes on its caliber, which is unfortunate because it is pretty good. I'd probably be willing to say, well, it's 110 metals. I feel like that's a pretty good way of indicating what caliber it is. It's probably a 105 caliber cannon, I'm willing to bet. Basically, an actual tank gun. So, we're keeping this thing. If only because, I'm not gonna lie, the cannon reminds me of the Dober gun that was used by the Tallgeese. Literally, and we're going back to it again, the Tallgeese has what is effectively a gigantic recoilless cannon as its primary armament. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're making an EXO Tallgeese here. So, let's make an EXO Tallgeese. So we're keeping the Lumberer anti-tank cannon. The thing is great as it is, no notes. Guys who did that at CMOS, well done. 120mm is an Abrams cannon? Yeah, exactly. It doesn't feel like it's quite as powerful as an Abrams cannon, because, I mean, an Abrams cannon is basically like deer grid coordinates levels of explosive force. You fire that shell and the entire neighborhood shakes. Buildings nearby explode. The concussive force is quite powerful. This is a strong cannon, but it does take a couple shots to even drop a charger. So I think the 105 is probably closer. You know, hold on. I'm going to take a look. We also have the historical basis of the Sherman. So Sherman battle tank. I believe the Firefly, because yes, the M4 Sherman was, technically it's a medium tank. But the whole point of it was, you know, it was designed specifically for use. So there's a particular one. So yeah, the British refitted some Shermans with a 76.2 millimeter fire, a 76.2 millimeter ordnance QF 17-pounder gun. That was called the Sherman Firefly, which is basically a really powerful alternative. The Sherman was normally designed to be a pack hunter. This is more powerful than the Sherman 76. I think that's pretty clear. The Sherman 76 was not really a high explosive weapon. It was usually designed to punch through a target, to ventilate a target. It's an AP weapon. This gun is just an AP weapon. It's explosive as hell. Can confirm, the gun used on the Lumberer, this thing has a blast radius. I have blown my own arms off, after a lot of fighting for the record. My mech was severely damaged by that point. But the blast radius is enough where it'll even damage the EXO. And it's significant. But it's not like grid coordinate. So yeah, 105 I think is about right. So we're gonna go with, this is gonna be our weapons, right over here. Weaponry. Or I should say primary loadout. Primary weapons loadout. I'm also going to add another feature onto its non-standard modifications, which I'm going to say modular shoulder mounts. So my thought on this is simple. Again, the arms are able to swap out. Modular arm mounts. So its primary weapons loadout is what Gentry usually brings in it. But he could theoretically swap it out for any weapon that an EXO could normally use that they could find. So if he's in field and one of the arms gets blown off, he can bolt one of them on. And unlike your average Helldiver, Gentry is a cyborg and incredibly strong. Again, liquid metal muscles. So, or I should say really not liquid, but memory metal muscles. So the guy's got the torque and the strength to lift up some of those arms and clamp them on himself. He doesn't really need a crane for maintenance. He just needs a wrench. So we've got the modular arm mounts. We've got our 105mm 105mm anti-tank. I think it's actually, hold on, is it anti-armor or anti-tank cannon? That's the EXO-51. It's an anti-tank. Okay. I'm gonna say anti-tank. Yeah, sure, we'll keep anti-tank. It's literally the Lumberer's one. So 150mm anti-tank cannon. It's definitely not recoilless, but it is good at what it does. It's very funny to me that they never described the caliber of the thing. I just find that really just really entertaining. Okay. Yeah, I don't think it is a recoilless cannon. As an emplacement. Yep, there's no other notes on it, so... Okay. So we have this anti-tank cannon, the 105mm, as its primary loadout on its right arm. On its left arm is something I'm going to be designing that's a little different. So we're taking a note, again, out of one of the two mechs from the new Warbond we mentioned. The right arm is the Lumberer. The left arm, on the other hand, we're taking a note out of the breakthrough. A little bit. Not completely. I don't want to give it a shield. That doesn't feel like the sort of thing Gentry would use. And honestly, optimizing it with the shield and using the shield and the 105mm really narrows its ability to do its job. It would have a basically vast middle range that it's not very well equipped to fight with. It can easily deal with hordes in melee and deal with bigger stuff in melee, and at range it can deal with bigger stuff. But basically, it'll be really over-engineered, again. And I know that's the whole point. The EXO-06X is designed to be overtuned, but I think it would just be a result of a confused loadout. I believe what Gentry's going for here is a loadout that can do both. But, namely, that's versatile. There's a difference between versatile and overcommitted in both directions. So what I'm keeping isn't the shield, but I like this articulating arm joint. Again, I gotta give the credit to where credit is due and spook that moth, or that wasp. Get out of here, wasp. Shoo shoo. They designed a surprisingly effective rotating hand joint. Again, this thing's attachment to that shield is very cool. It has, again, rotating... It's a solid wrist joint. It rotates. It goes up and down. It elevates. And then it traverses... I should say, it traverses, it elevates, and it also hinges. That's a very good wrist. And it's mounted onto an arm that, again, literally sort of extends as it needs to, like a piston. Again, the Rock'em Sock'em effect. I like this idea. Because again, if there's one thing that Gentry is known for in the webcomic, it is that he does like to punch things. A lot. Like, not even a little bit. It's not really a subtle thing he does. Like, Gentry's kinda known for punching the shit out of stuff. To the point where, like, the most iconic image of him I have is probably him literally cutting through stuff with his bare hands and punching through things. I think the one time he even cameoed with Delaney. Yeah, the one time he cameoed with Delaney, I went out of my way to make a huge fist-fighting scene where literally the two of them just beat the shit out of each other with metal arms. And I love that. I love that part of its design. So we're gonna keep that. I like the idea that if Gentry has a mech, it has to be like him. And so that means one simple thing. Gentry's mech has to be able to punch people. We're gonna borrow this. We're gonna basically take what Gentry has on his arm, and we're gonna modify it for the EXO-46X. That's the goal. So this is going to be the left arm. And I'm gonna combine a couple of elements here. Let's talk about Gentry's arms again, because we did briefly mention them before, and they are important. So, Gentry's arms aren't just big metal punchy things. They can electrify themselves and cause fantastic damage. But also, in addition to that, they also contain, and I'm gonna move this over a little bit so we can see more clearly. Here we go. Gentry's arms contain weapon bays. Those weapon bays are designed so that he can literally split his forearm open and pull back his hand, and strike at a target with whatever is internally mounted in them. Usually I stick a grenade pistol in there, but nowadays the ultimatum is probably more likely what he's carrying around in there. But even then, sometimes he has laser pistols, he has shotguns, he has whatever the mission calls for in there. Hell, he might even have a melee weapon mounted in there at some point. But for the most part, the whole point of it is Gentry's arms are basically extra mounting points for heavier weaponry than your average person can carry. So, in addition to being punchy things, they also shoot things. But in addition to that, we also have one other feature that Gentry has designed that I think is really of note, that I have currently here in his character sheet. And we're going to take a moment to read this. So, this is talking about his reactive shielding. You can see it across his body, actually. These blue lines have a purpose. This blue strip here is actually a sensor strip, but the rest of this blue lighting that he has across his armor, that's actually part of his reactive shielding system. He basically re-engineered it in a super Earth energy shield to work this way. So, quote, Gentry's armor possesses a reactive shielding system of his own design. A series of energy conduits crisscross the entirety of his undersuit, creating a weak static field over the surface of the armor. If the static field is disrupted by the approach of a foreign object, such as a metal slug or a magnetically bound laser beam or plasma bolt, the suit discharges a focused bolt of electricity, negating the impact. The static field takes time to recover after a discharge. When fully charged, it's incredibly potent. As a secondary effect, the armor very efficiently insulates the wearer from electrical shocks. This is where he gets his ability to electrically uppercut people. Basically, his reactive shielding, when he gets within range of somebody and it's active, once the magnetic field around it, that low-level static field around his armor is breached, just like a short circuit in a wire, or a live wire, really just like a breached live wire that gets its connection touched, it conducts a huge surge of electricity into whatever it strikes. This gives Gentry's punches a stunning additional impact, but also on top of that means that if someone shoots him, there's a decent chance it'll batter it away. This was kind of my way of explaining why Gentry has the There's like one particular armor perk in the game. I believe it's Democracy Protects, or basically every time your character takes what will be considered lethal damage, the game flips a coin, and 50-50, you don't die. You just survive the impact with like 1 hit point. And you can theoretically live forever if you keep making the 50-50. Anybody out there who's played enough like tabletop role-playing games or tabletop war games, this is the equivalent of an invulnerable save, or a like like a luck roll. Basically, if I give you a die, a d6, and I say you survive on a 4-up, then that means every fight ever becomes a 50-50 chance. That's pretty good odds for you, and pretty bad odds for anyone who tries to mess you up. Because theoretically, rolling average will keep you alive. So, that's how I worked in Gentry, both using energy shields frequently and Democracy Protects. And I figured I'd give it a little extra fluff. So, we're going to take that reactive shielding system, his arm bays, and his enhanced muscle strength, and attach that into a weapon system that I'm going to call... I'm figuring out the name of it, but I think I got it. So I'm going to give this thing a serial number, because I like giving things serial numbers. So a GDC... I'm going to say GDC 01 Southpaw weapon array. I call it the Southpaw for one simple reason. Boxing is funny. Sci-fi explained plot armor, pretty much. It felt more appropriate than going like Democracy Protects. It doesn't match Gentry very well. But science does. Gentry's a faithless heretic. No, actually the proper way to describe it is Gentry isn't a faithless heretic. Gentry is a true believer in the advancement of human sciences and human learning. And it only makes sense that Gentry would use his learning and his training to protect himself. So the Southpaw weapon array. Let's do a quick doodle of this thing. We're probably not going to get the whole of the EXO done, but we can get some interesting art drawn. So I'm going to call this the Southpaw. And I'm going to take the majority of the EXO here. We're going to take the full body armor. Okay, there's that. We have our actual silhouette here. Here we go, we have the block. We're just going to make the block only like 25%. So that way we can still sort of see it in the background as its shape, but I can work on the Southpaw array. So the Southpaw array's idea is this. Take ourselves the arm that we have already. I'm going to make this 75, so I don't have to do it a million times. So we're going to take the standard EXO arm. And I'm just going to silhouette this out here pretty quickly. We're just going to ram this through. And add some really rough doodles very shortly to just sort of clean it up. Okay, so we've got that. We've got this arm cuff. That sort of comes down a little bit. It's a little further than that, actually. It's about this big, I think. I want to also give it slightly elongated proportions. Again, older EXO, so I want this thing to stand a little taller than the normal ones. And we're going to give this thing its arm. But the arm on the original actually doesn't really articulate up and down. It only, at the elbow, rotates side to side. We're going to fix that. This thing's going to have full arm articulation. So, we take the same assembly. We give ourselves a gear, or a flexion point. We don't need it to be fully, to go super far, but I want it to be able to, at least to 45. So I feel like that works about here. Okay, cool. And then we're going to take this here, connect it in, and we're going to extend the arm out. So we're not going to make the arm super long, but I have an idea. So it has a forearm. The forearm is wherever the munition is stored. So I like the idea that this thing builds up a static charge. We're going to go with the same idea that we went for Gentry's reactive armor system. This thing stores a static charge and slowly builds up on it. And over time, as the static charge dramatically improves in its intensity, it can be discharged in melee. But I also like the idea that it's able to be discharged at range. I don't want this thing to just have a traditional gun. I want this thing to be more like a lightning rod. So, for those of you who are familiar with the horrifying effects of an arc tower in Helldivers 2, that's basically what we're incorporating into here, along the internal arm. We're making an arc tower. But we're not just making an arc tower. We're also going to incorporate an energy shield generator. Very similar to the way that we have it with Gentry before, where he has his reactive armor system. Instead, we're going to take this, and as opposed to it being a reactive armor system, we're going to make this a dynamo-based ranged weapon, and incorporate an actual shield generator. We have the technology. It does, in fact, exist in the game. This would be, if I can open this up, so this is going to be in the stratagems. We have a already emplaced, or I guess a sentry, technically. And that sentry, is it an emplacement? I guess it's technically an emplacement, I suppose. Would be the FX12 shield generator relay. And those of you not familiar with the shield generator, here you go. We're going to take this thing and condense it down onto the arm of the mech. Not something that runs forever, but runs temporarily. And unlike the actual stratagem, doesn't explode when it's used, but instead simply powers down and recharges. Likewise, it's not going to be the full version. You see, this is designed to keep an entire area protected. We don't need to do that. Instead, what we need to do, and this is where I have to get the actual thing open, we're going to incorporate elements from the SH-51 directional shield into this. Again, this is a Helldiver mounted contraption, allowing someone to literally fire through the energy shield and provide cover for buddies. I feel like this makes a lot more sense for Gentry. A heavy, bulky shield doesn't really work for Gentry. He doesn't really run ballistic packs. He's way more mobile than that. But a lightweight energy shield that's designed to work from a direction? That's fantastic. It'll also prevent the mech from having the same level of plot armor that Gentry has. Yes, it does have an energy shield. No, it's not omnidirectional. He has to utilize it much like a buckler. This also explains why the arm has greater traversal and reach. It needs to be able to articulate to move in whatever direction it needs to protect. It still can't really protect the left side as much, or sorry, its right side, but it can rotate to the front for it to fire through it. So we're going to incorporate dual components. We're going to use the same projection technology as the or the same directionalized SH-51 directional shield tech, and we're going to marry it to the vastly improved FX-12 shield generator relay's output. So we're going to zoom in here, and I'm going to add an extra subsection here, because this is where we get into some weird shit. Alright, so this is going to be I'm going to use FX not 12, I believe the other one it's 12 and then it's 51. We're going to split the difference. This is going to be an FX, we're going to go 53. FX 53 directional shield. I feel like that's about right, directional energy shield. We're going to have the reactive armor system here. Or in this case, I guess it'd be, what would the term for this be? It'd be dynamo something. Static dynamo? I suppose static dynamo weapon? I'm going to take a look and see what they say about the arc. I guess arc would be the other descriptor for it. Let's see. We're going to go back to our stratagems here. And I'm going to continue to open an annoyingly large amount of extra tabs, which is very dangerous for me, by the way. I'm going to close a couple of these on the side. You guys can't see me doing it, but I am. So this is where we look at our sentry. This is the Arc Tower, the Tesla Tower. So it's technically a Tesla system. And again, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Tesla, because you haven't played the game yet, don't worry. Helldivers Wiki got you covered. This is a Tesla Tower. It is terrifyingly powerful, incredibly lethal, and also incredibly lethal to you if you get close to it. The electrical arc will literally leap from target to target, indiscriminate of who it is. As long as you're within radius, it can leap to you. The only way to avoid it is to ground yourself by laying flat on the ground. And even then, like other turrets, crawling gets you under it unless the elevation changes, in which case you might still get killed. Use with caution. The difference is, unlike the Tesla Tower, which, when deployed, just decides it's going to kill you relentlessly for its entire duration, we're going to take that and flip it on its head. This thing isn't going to be used indefinitely. Instead, it's going to be used in a directionalized way. I suppose technically this means it would have less in common with the Arc Tower and more in common with the Arc Thrower, which, if I can open this up, so that would be support weapon, and that would be our, yeah, the Arc 3 Arc Thrower. So we'll just call it, I guess this would be an arc weapon, then, by definition. So we open it up. So the Arc 3 Arc Thrower, you charge it up, and it literally is chained lightning. It leaps across targets and does a fair amount of damage. It's actually capable of punching through heavy armor, which is very interesting. But it's usually not worth it for most players to take. No shade on anyone who uses it. It's just like, again, much like I have certain weapons I enjoy using, it falls under the very niche category, and tends to be just folks who like the playstyle more than what's most efficient. There are more efficient builds, but we're not here for efficiency, we're here for having fun. So, any Helldiver out there running the Arc, you got my respect, have a fun time. If you kill me with it, I will melee you to death the next time I land. So, we're going to take the same concept as the Arc Thrower and just amp that shit up. We're going to call this is going to be the Arc, I'm going to go with Arc 32. We're going to ramp that number up a little higher. We're going to call it the Arc 32 Arc Cannon. I'm going to go with, we're going to go to the Tesla Towers designation now. This is the A-ARC-32 Static Dynamo system. And then finally, we have a ranged gun, we have an energy shield, we have one final detail, and that is heavy melee manipulator. I want this thing to have a claw. I want this thing to have a grippy claw. I always think about how terrifying it is in science fiction to get punched by something big. It is always an enjoyable detail for me. It's always a very fun detail for me to see when something gets punched by something big. And that is always hilarious to me. There's one particular mech I always think about, which is Big O. It's not going to be quite as extreme, but we do need to factor in how terrifyingly, punchy this thing can be. So I'm going to see if I can find the particular image I'm looking for here. I just want to see him punch somebody, because it's really good. I guess I'll have to use this original one. Here we go. Think I found it? Here we go. So we're not going to watch the whole thing. This is from the anime Big O. It's really fun anime. Can't recommend it enough. It's enjoyable. Here we go. This is what I often think about when I think about punching somebody, is Big O with its giant, hulking, like, metal iron fists and the pistons in it. And just, you know, what would happen if a skyscraper decided it was gonna run up and punch you? And the answer is, you would die. You would get thrown very far, and I love that bit. I think it's very cool. So we're gonna include a little element of the sudden impact, just for the fun of it. So heavy melee manipulator. This thing isn't gonna be fully, like, piston-y, but almost, Hulkbuster. There we go. There's like one particular bit, which is the Hulkbuster from Marvel, go to sleep. That. I want the go to sleep punch. But for that to be Gentry's left arm. So we've got a left arm that builds a static charge. As it builds the static charge, it unlocks its ability to use its directional energy shield, which it runs off of the static dynamo, or it can power the Arc 32 for one horrifying electrical wallop, which will allow it to strike at multiple medium to hard targets. It's not quite as heavy hitting as the 105, and it definitely doesn't have the range, but at a medium to short range, it gives Gentry a pretty decent crowd clearing mechanism. And then finally, when it gets into melee, punch. And I think that's what we're going to go with. So heavy, retractable melee. Melee manipulator. So far, so good. I like the design, the visual aesthetic of what we're going for here. We're going to go a little further than that. We're going to pop back in here and start doing the doodle. So I'm incorporating elements where I can from each of the different systems we're merging to make this machine. First off, I'm going to also get this little cogs in the back, because I find that just makes the design look a little more believable right out of the rip. Does it matter? No, not really. Is it kind of silly? Absolutely. Who cares? We're here to have fun. So, we have this, which then extends into a forearm, which this is the part that actually would extend out and has the claw at the end of it. Now, the claw is something I want to try something a little interesting visually with that I haven't done so far. It is not going to be a normal hand, because I don't want this to literally read like an anime thing. I already have enough anime influence in this as it is. This thing, again, is basically the tall geese, but without the ability to fly. So, yeah. Don't talk me into making this thing fly, please. I will do it. It's a dangerous thing to do. Don't do it. But yes, this thing literally has the ability to punch people, much like the go-to-sleep mechanism. And then finally, I'm actually going to do this. We're going to have two versions of this. Here we go. So this is going to be extended. We're going to duplicate this, retracted. Actually, no, we don't need to do two. We're going to hold only one. Yeah. We're going to instead, I'll have this with the arc cannon. And claw deployed. And I will give this thing an energy shield deploy as well. Cool. Let's see, I picture a 40k Dreadnought hand. You're not too far off. That's actually pretty close. So we're going to take the different things here and just sort of integrate them together. So for energy shield, I'm going to grab both of these. So we're going to grab all of these while we can. Now that I think about it, they're all going to have the same thing. This part's going to be completely not transparent, but it's literally just going to be like metal spars. So literal hydraulics. Which gives it a little bit more of a see-through sort of look. Now we can start working on the individual parts. We'll take the whole southpaw weapon array, pull it a little to the right, as we figure out what we're going to put on this thing. Now, as far as the claw goes, I'm going to turn these other ones off here. And just make sure I got all these other ones in the right place. Good, I do. We're going to save this. So the claw itself, I like the idea of it being almost triangular. This also gives us a clear conduit for where the energy cannon fires from. From the middle. So need to slightly widen this just a little bit. There we go. Cool. And then we can sort of put the exterior parts here. Like that. Now we can get in and add a little detail. We're going to make this is on overlay, we're going to fix that. Put that on normal. Alright. So each of these component parts here have the actual fingers. There we go. And then inside, we actually have sort of where the firing mechanism for the actual cannon is. And I figure the fingers literally can sort of like extend out and sort of grab from here. So they can literally fold up and sort of like grippy. Giving this thing a slightly more horrifying grabbing capacity. I'm going to slightly change the way that that looks. But this is just sort of to give you guys an idea, and to give me an idea of what I want to do with it later. So it has these finger flanges that come off. And give it the ability to grab stuff. There we go. We're just going to add a couple of other little details here. So this guy can get in close, grab something, and crush it. So this snatch, pull back kind of action. Or if it wants to punch, it simply just closes its hand and then just strikes base like a sledgehammer. If it wants to fire the cannon, I'm going to just copy this and bring this over to the energy cannon. Boop. There we go. That's going to be claw deployed. Merge down. Arc cannon deployed. We're going to merge this down onto the arc cannon. So this is where this is going to change. When the arc cannon is deployed, the flanges are brought down and instead become conductors. We're going to take this. We're going to move this out. And the interior of the hand literally opens up. Oh, hold on. There we go. The interior of the hand opens and expands, which allows the actual gun to sort of breathe and get a little bit of space, which should probably keep the actual electrical motors that articulate the fingers a little safer. Especially from that static discharge, which would cause a lot of damage to any electronic components. In fact, actually, hold on. I like the idea that these condense in when it fires. There we go, that works. To fall flat on that. Cool. And then we have the actual sort of like claw here, where you can sort of see where it lands flat. So this is with the finger flanges retracted. And then we sort of get in here. And that's when we get the actual arc, where I'm going to grab sort of that electric blue so we can see very clearly. So this is what it looks like when it's actually charging up from the interior as the arc cannon builds up its firing and then discharges. And we have the actual, like, flanges here, illuminated from the interior. And this sort of gives us an idea of how bright this is going to be. So once this thing fires, its claw turns into the actual arc cannon, which does very neatly dovetail with the actual design that we saw already of the Arc 3 arc thrower, which, if you look at it, its firing nozzle almost kind of looks a little bit like a claw. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it has like these Tesla leads on it. I'm not sure if you can see it. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think there's a way for me to make it any wider. Yeah, there's no way for me to make it wider. We're just gonna have to hope you guys see what I'm talking about. Oh wait, here we go. Hold on. There's another one. Yeah, there we go. We can actually see it right there. You can, as I point on the screen, like you guys can see. You can see it right here. It actually has a three-pronged arc design. So this allows us to incorporate that very effectively into the design. Here we go. That lets us see those actual like prongs. As it fires, those flip open and discharge electricity. We're literally just incorporating that into the actual hand, the grappling hand that this thing has. Here we go. And I'm just gonna put a little electric light in there. Just to make it very clear what this thing is doing. And just add a little bit of extra static arcs on here. I always like doing this whenever I do electricity. A little trick I learned when I was a kid from, hilariously, the artist behind the covers of a lot of the Sonic the Hedgehog comics. His handle, as I recall, is, and again, this is his handle, not my call, his handle, Spaz Harvo. He did incredible, cool scenes. And honestly, I liked his art. It was very good. As an adult, his name is a little the name for his handle is a little unfortunate, but as far as, like, his actual art, he deserves credit. But it's a great way to immediately be like, oh yeah, that's electricity. So that's what the arc thrower hand looks like when it's charged and firing from the front, as opposed to when it's just the claw deployed, where you can sort of see instead what it's doing. We're going to put this in a slightly brighter color, so we can sort of more accurately denote what it looks like. When this thing deploys its claw. So it has this grappling claw when it's fighting normally. And these outer parts here, which just sort of reinforce it. We're going to put these little details here because it does have hinges. They mostly retract, but it does have hinges. So that's what it looks like when its battle claw is deployed. And you can see, again, it sort of sits here almost like this, with a subdivision here, so... So it's not quite perfectly symmetrical, it's like slightly off-center, almost starfish-like. And this is just me adding some details onto here. But it gives you an idea of what we're working with. So that's with the claw deployed. And then with the shield deployed, we actually don't need to have either of those claws out. Instead, I kind of like the idea that when the shield is deployed, it actually retracts its hydraulics mostly. And instead activates its shield generator, which is mostly going to lay back here. Now, there's almost always hexagons incorporated into the shield design, so I kind of want to keep that. As well as also these kind of like almost piston-looking things. Maybe I'll slightly increase the size of that coming up. Yeah, I like that. That's not too bad. Oop. Here we go, and the underside does the same sort of thing. Now, I like the idea that the underside is a little more exposed, allowing you to see a little more of the internal mechanisms for just a hair more whimsy than we had before. Most of this is the shield generator system. And we'll pull it a little further back. So I guess it does have to go a little higher. Cool, that works. Now we're going to get in here and clean this up properly. So we can sort of see what I'm talking about a little more clearly. In terms of the shapes that are present inside of this thing. Usually this is what I call refining stage, where you take what's already been put down and you sort of make it look good now. Or at least make it look better. I would be lying if I didn't say as an artist there are plenty of times that I enter refining and I still feel bad. But it's fine, it doesn't have to be perfect. So we're going to put this here. We're going to increase the size and the shape, give this thing a very clear top. And we're going to do the same thing here. This is the side armor. And then over here we're going to do the same thing. Sort of just to show where the curves on the armor are. Cool. Okay. So this is more or less what the exterior paneling would look like on this thing. We're going to go in here and sort of give this a little covering. Just to sort of show where, like, the actual shell of the armor is. Where the light would fall. Okay, cool. Now we can sort of go on the bottom and just touch up a couple of the details. The bottom should be the darkest part, no matter what. And we can do that like this. Cool. Alright, now once we're inside these components here, we can really start going sort of nuts. I like the idea, again, that this is an energy shield system. And this is just sort of us doodling it. So if we go back to the energy shield projector here, to our shield relay and what it looks like. Yeah, we don't really see much more than just like the tip of what it looks like from behind. But they actually have... There we go, close this. They actually have the image here. I'm surprised they don't show the front of it more. There we go. It almost has a buckler-y kind of look to it. So we're gonna take that idea and run with it. Once it ignites, it creates an energy shield that faces forward, has a little light there, a little light there. The primary shine comes from the middle. Now we're going to give this thing multiple projectors because it's going to be covering something as big as an EXO. And its entire front and side when it's deployed. And now we're going to take a little bit of this here. I'm going to make this 45. And make it more neatly denote where the light falls. Because this is where we begin to play with light, and as I've mentioned to you guys before, light is where you get all the detail from. Light is where you get to play around and make something seem like it's real, even when it's completely fake. If you can halfway decently denote where light sources are, you're good. Lurking while I job hunt. Good to see you, Dylan. Much love, buddy. I hope the job hunt goes well today. Okay. Then we have the outside. Basically, wherever the other projectors are shining, they're shining on each other, which is creating a lot of diffuse light, which I kind of like. Then we have this going up to about here. And then we take this down. And we'll do the same thing over here. Cool. That looks pretty decent. And wherever the light is brightest is where that edge highlighting is brightest. Again, if anyone out here paints miniatures, you already know the drill. This is literally edge highlighting and directional lighting 101. Okay, so we've got that. And now we can begin to really jack up the light. I'm going to add little details in here as well. Kind of like the idea of incorporating like a hexagonal pattern. Like the projector itself might be in a round housing, but it has a square emitter. Or like a, oh, sorry, a hexagonal emitter. A square emitter! Omni, do you know your shapes? I do. There's square, there's triangle, there's pentagon, and heptagon, and hexagon, and octagon, and nonagon, and decagon, and all the other gons no one uses. Because a hexagon is superior. Hexagon is truly the king of the gons. Oh, let's see. Oh, yeah, a lot of experience with lighting. Yep. Yeah, I was gonna say, if anybody here can immediately understand that, it's you. I know you paint plenty of great miniatures. Go follow Dylan. But like, yeah, no, it's always very fun to work with lighting. It's the same techniques, really. I actually learned how to paint light like this in paintings from painting miniatures. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm really glad I learned how to do it that way. It's served me quite well. Alright, so you've got that design humming along nicely. We're gonna pop in here very quickly. Save this. And again, where the light is brightest, edge highlighting intensifies. Basically, the entire interior housing here should be the brightest thing possible. Because it is right butt up against what is a very vivid light. Okay. Let's intensify again. We're amping it up to white. Okay. I'm going to hit the interior of this, because this is the biggest emitter, and thus the brightest, and its edge should be the brightest. But the others should be pretty decently bright too. There's a point where we're just going to lose them for the lighting, but that's a-okay. I'm alright with it. Alright. Now we get into the serious light. I'm going to put this up to 75. We're going big business here. This is what you use when you want detail in the middle of light. Nearly white. We're doing the same thing here. All these in slightly different sizes, slightly different positions, creating a curved energy shield, which allows this side of the EXO to basically create a defensive perimeter that other Helldivers can hide behind. Primarily, that's the big thing. This will not just shield the EXO, but other divers and people around him, and allow him to really let it rip. There we go. And just outline the interior. And again, this area here is the brightest concentration of light, so it gets the brightest edge. So that looks pretty dangerously bright golden. Well, I'd say that's very shield generator-y. We just need to get the actual, like, glowing stretched hexagons, which we'll get there. We'll get there. We're not quite done. We have one more tier of brightness to get to, which is pure white. And then we'll be all set. You see, pure white you have to use sparingly, because it almost has a bluish tinge. The eye tends to give it a blue tinge. Titanium white. It's something about it. I think it's because blue tends to incorporate a fair bit of white into it. Fun fact! Really fun fact. Actually, for the longest time, the color blue didn't exist. Not that it didn't exist, but we didn't have a word for it. In fact, actually, a lot of ancient texts simply conflate the color of blue with the color of gray, as they refer to the color of the sea or the sky. Which if anyone's ever seen like an angry sea or an angry sky in the Mediterranean, you would understand that. Other cultures had their versions of blue, but for a period of time, there was no color for blue. I think this also plays a little bit into why titanium white reads not like always inherently a little blue, because I think blue has always been rendered somewhat as gray. So it makes sense that a pure white would read a little bit as a blue, even when it's used and derived, as this one is, from a yellow basis. There's very limited blue involved in this, if there's any at all. And yet, here we are against a background of brilliant gold, and it still shows up. It's like almost a little periwinkle. Hey, Curly, good to see you, buddy. Welcome aboard. We're doing some doodles for an EXO today. Having a fun time. I'm making the Southpaw weapon array that sits on Gentry's EXO Vigilant on its left arm. Speaking of, we've officially reached the point now where I feel like we are good with the lighting. Okay, I'm just going to put like a little bit of white here to denote that it's very bright. But we're going to go light on it. I don't want it to be super oversaturated here, you know? It's already so bright it looks like a Sunkist commercial, so, you know. We don't need to go too far into this. How you doing today, Curly? You having a good day? I hope you're having a good day. And I'm gonna put this here. This is the shield array. Hence why it's gold. We have the battering claw, which I'll denote as orange. It's called a battle claw. I feel like that's the appropriate way to describe it. And then finally for blue, we have the arc cannon. Cool. So we're going to pop over here and we're going to do a little bit of some. I mentioned that this thing has these like discs, and the whole dynamo is charged off of the same arc energy that Gentry uses to build static up in his arms to discharge and attack people, as well as also to protect himself. It's the same system. So this is the static dynamo I was mentioning, incorporated into the actual machine. And I like the idea that it actually draws most of its real electrical power from in here. Let's see, the comment, but hexagons are the bestagons is the way painting, so I cook. Yeah, no, that's very fair. Your way painting, your way cooking. No, I got that. I feel you. I was thinking about that. Absolutely. You good about what you? I'm doing good. I'm doing very good. I'm having a fun time. I'm drawing with my friends. How much more good could I possibly be doing? And I like the idea that a little bit of the electricity, the dynamo itself, has its batteries on there, but its actual static charger is actually here in the elbow joint. Whenever it traverses or moves, it saves energy from that. It takes the static and it builds it up and sends it into the lower arm, where it actually stores it up and then uses it. And we're gonna do that by just giving this thing a couple of, there we go. This is where I find out if I properly spaced these gears. I did not. I can already tell you I did not. So this is going to be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, huh. I did. It just looks weird. Okay. Sure. So yeah, there we go. So we have the dynamo when it's charging here. And then it unleashes that energy into whatever subsystem it's using. So in this case, the subsystem being deployed is the shield generator, which I can put on here. I'm actually going to go and grab some of these elements very fast. Hold on. I'm going to grab this. Here we are. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to add a little extra on. Oh, right. This isn't with add. It's on new. Lame. Not what I wanted. Stupid. Dumb. Not correct. Okay, and I'm going to go around here, grab this whole thing. Pulls back around. And that's everything but that section. Cool, 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 cool. Now I can go into the battle claw, open that up. And I can turn the shield array off. We can open the battle claw, which I can then put that over the top so we actually have the shield array. This is going to be the dynamo. And we're going to copy the dynamo onto the other one as well because the art cannon absolutely needs the dynamo. As Gentry's not just rocking your standard mech here. Wham! Love it. Beautiful. I love it when a good plan comes together. Immediately we got a good design. And it feels good. It feels solid. Already it feels solid. So we're going to open the shield array again, which is active here. We're going to turn off the arc cannon part here, but we're going to draw on here. We're going to have some fun with this one. So I'm going to go back over here, and I'm just going to add some detail here so that this part is correct. Because this whole section here is about to be made very dark and dim. Because it's only illuminated by this shield projector, which is not going to be on when the energy cannon is active. So we're going to take all that. We're going to grab this. And we're just going to start fixing some of these areas here. Okay. We're going to get onto this, and we're going to start covering this up. I'm just going to have a little bit of a highlight here for the moment. So I can see how the arm rests. Cool, cool, cool. It looks pretty decent so far. This is just so I can see what the shape is of the arm. And its internal plating. And then we're going to just sort of capture this, because that array is not going to be active again when the arc cannon is on. And if done correctly, when I turn off the energy shield layer, I'll have a proper dynamo system, like, outlined. It'll look good. It'll look good. That's the goal. I can make a million words up for it as I like. I can try to sound highfalutin, or I can just tell you, it gonna look good. It gonna look good. Okay, and I turn the energy shield off. And hey, we've got a baseline. That's something to work with, baby. That's good stuff. Now I can turn that on. And hey, it actually does not look half as bad as I thought it did. Let's go! Now I can get in here and just sort of have at it. Cool. Swap this back up here. Beautiful. And then I just need to take a look at that shield array one more time. I'm going to turn the big block off here. That's right, there was one part I missed, which is this right here. Cool. And now I can turn the shield array off, and it looks good. Beautiful. And it'll have, like, a little bit of that sort of, like, empty camera lens energy to it. So I'm going to put, like, a very simple grayscale shine on it. Give it, like, a very dim yellow so that you can see it is an energy shield. It's just inactive. Put this here. So it doesn't just look like it's nothing. Cool. go in here with a darker color and denote the edges of where things are, and we're going to be looking grand. There. That actually does not look that bad. And because these are disabled, there's actually some shadow on these. Very nice. And then we're going to give it just a really dim, dull orange light in there. 25%. Not even that. 15% is probably enough. 25. There we go. So we can see it's inactive, but even when it's inactive, it still has like a little bit of a yellow glow to it. And I'm going to give like a little, like, peer of like, there's a little bit of yellow there. That's not bad. Okay, so that gives us a pretty decent look at what this thing would look like. Even in low power, there's like some hint of what it can do. As I squint, because it's very bright outside. I'm very grateful I have a window that faces the, that faces the outdoors. I actually get to see things. But every once in a while, sun reminds me that why a lot of artists don't stare into the, like, they don't stare into the sun. And owie. There we go. Okay, cool. So this gives us a pretty good gauge of what this thing looks like. It has 3 modes. It has an arc cannon with a powered dynamo on it, as they all do. And I'm going to copy the dynamo here, actually. Put this here. Delete the old dynamo. And yeah, that feels pretty good. I'm going to put this underneath here so that it's present. And this is going to be the energy shield. Cool. So yeah, this thing has 3 modes. The arc cannon, it has a battle claw, where the hand opens up and it literally just sort of squeezes or punches things. And then finally, it has a shield array, which when active, creates a incredibly vivid and powerful field, which is very similar to the directional shield. This is where I get to go to the polygon tool, and I get to make the exact same color we had here before, just even brighter. And this is going to be 6 sides. I'm going to save this. Cool. And then we're going to, this appears to be right. I believe the sides are more or less fine. I just want to take a look and see what it looks like when it's deployed. Yeah, that's actually exactly right. The interior of this is going to be actually decreased in its opacity significantly. That's more like it. And this is going to have like a little opacity drift. Just like a hair. Cool. Then we can just take that. And I can make sure this is on the right level. Awesome. Cool. We can duplicate this a couple times. I love the shape tool. I love it. It's so good. And as this thing is activated, it creates a very wide field around it. We're not going to show the whole thing, but we are going to make it pretty wide. Here we go. Okay, so we can take all that, all these here, move them, so they sort of come around here. That feels about right. About here. We can actually take these and shrink the whole thing, the whole group, just a hair, so that it'll fit onto our page. Beautiful. Look at that. Ain't that nice? And then I can just take this whole group here, duplicate it, and move it up. And we can do this to create a pretty good mesh of what we're trying to make, which is an energy shield, a directionalized energy shield. Beautiful. Look at that. Ain't that nice? Ain't that satisfying? Just be like, oh yeah, look at that. Ain't that good? And then we can go in here and we can edit the number of hexagons to edit the shape of the shield, which I kind of want it to be a little top heavy, a little bit like forward heavy, so we're gonna do that. I can hear the train. There we go. We're gonna add a little more. And we're going to add a little more to the bottom. I think that's about right, because it's 3 above, 3 below. That works. Let's start taking out some of these pixels here. Each of these is an individual polygon that can be deleted. So if we go from the front to the back, we should get some interesting results. We're going to go to the layer above. Ah, here we go. Oop. Slightly out of sequence. Here we go. Okay, that's correct. We're going to go back here. That feels good. And then on the top, we're going to do the exact opposite again, till it matches the bottom. Good, that's correct. I again cannot tell you how satisfying this is. It is very, very satisfying indeed. Oh boy, I love that. That's such a good energy. Ain't that nice? Ain't that just grand? Oh, I love it to death. Cool. We can take all of these, put them under here into one. This is going to be energy shield. Cool. And now we can take the whole thing and just sort of, well, reduce the opacity a little bit, as we'd like. And yeah, we have the energy shield for the final version of the EXO-45 VIGILANT, which feels pretty good. Now, I'm not going to lie, this is probably about as far as we're going to be getting on our video today. I wanted to get the basics done, so I feel like we've done a fair bit here. I'm just going to mark this down until these are all roughly in the same place. There we go. We can take that, make that invisible. There we go. That's the one. Oh wow, that's really close, actually. Beautiful. Look at that. Ain't that nice? Then I can just take that, copy that here. I'm just going to call it as a heavy, as opposed to melee manipulator, Battle Claw. There we go. Why reinvent the wheel? We've already got a wheel. It does fine. So we have the Southpaw weapon array on one hand. It's like one particular one, extra bold. Here we go. And this will be extra bold as well. Nice. Okay. And just like that, we have the beginnings of Gentry's mech. Primary weapons. The left hand, or the right hand 105mm anti-tank cannon on the right arm. And in the left arm, this interesting little hybrid weapon system designed by Gentry based off of his own advancements in his own cybernetics called the, and I love the name, the GDC-01 Southpaw Weapon Array, which includes a FX-53 directional energy shield, an ARC-32 arc cannon, a heavy retractable battle claw, and let's go through these, sorry, I forgot, energy shield, arc cannon, battle claw, and of course, the heart of its system is the ARC-32 static dynamo system, which literally builds up energy as the EXO fights, as it uses its left arm, traverses it, rotates it, swings it, manipulates it in any way. It's building up static electricity, which it stores, and then siphons into an internal battery, which it then uses to power any of these systems, giving Gentry's mech a little bit of like a Swiss Army knife for a left arm. Lets it do a little bit of everything, but not as well as a fully committed mech. And all of it is powered off the same technology he's made out of. Combine that with the non-standard modifications we went through earlier. As I mentioned, modular arm mounts, which means he can swap the mech's arms in field or in the shop if he needs to have specific mission variable loadouts. An adapted stratagem launcher on the top left as I zoom out our friend here. Let's take a moment and go back to the full picture. We're going to turn off the weapon array here and bring the full block back into its visibility and get our picture, which we had over here. Here we go. So, based off the original Vigilant frame, this is going to include the stratagem launcher in the top left, an expanded camera suite to allow it to see better, improved 3M weave musculature for faster and stronger faster movement, more rapid responses, and also greater torque and strength, hardened ceramic armor system, and a cybernetic control system which allows our cyborg here to just literally pilot it by hooking his nervous system directly into the thing via his already electronically and cybernetically integrated cyborg systems. Basically, he puts his arms in the machine and the machine becomes part of him. This is the beginning of the EXO 3X Vigilant, the prototype that Gentry has rescued. I feel pretty good with this, folks. And I want to thank you all for tuning in today. Again, a huge thanks to everyone who's tuned in. Hey, do me a favor. Hit the like button and subscribe if you can. I'm a small channel. Anything you can do to help me grow is appreciated. And that's the best way to do it here. Other than that, if you guys want to support me elsewhere or read the webcomic this is based off of, which is, again, Gentry Dolaan Aint No Fascist, you can read it, actually, over on my Patreon. Patreon.com/LastOmnitech. The whole thing is available for free to read there, so please go give it a read. You can also follow and enjoy just all my other updates, which include my weekly schedules, details about my tabletop role-playing game work, including Legacy First Flight, a game I've been writing and actively am writing. I'll be going back to writing this shortly after I go for a little stroll, and many more things. Plus also my subscribers, who actually are actively paying patrons, Ampersand Atlas JJ Cray at Tier 1, Necronomus and Souls Rolls at Tier 2, and Mossy the Mighty and Heinrich the Heroic at Tier 3, all get special shoutouts at the end of my videos and during my live streams, as well as also at the end of all of my webcomics, and also they get a patron's credit in my role-playing games and also my webcomics. If you're tier 3, you even get to make your own character, or help, or I should say, not make your own character. Anyone can do that. You get to also have a cameo character show up in Gentry Dolaan Aint No Fascist, or potentially some of my other projects moving forward. So thank you guys so much for your support on my Patreon. You guys are the folks who are keeping my roof above my head and keep this whole Hug and Pony show going. I am the last Omnitech, your favorite robot American. And I hope all of you have an amazing day. Take care, Voyagers. Peace.